Well, hello there, Darksiders. I hope everyone's doing well this morning. So, we are in the month of July, and it's going to be August next month. That means we are getting closer and closer to the rise of Skywalker. So, I figured, why not take a step back and have a small journey through the sequel trilogy as of so far? And I really started thinking about exactly what has happened and what has gone on with the sequel trilogy as of right now. I know a lot of people, especially within the fandom menace, kind of just sees the inconsistency that's been going on between the sequel trilogy. And honestly, I agree with them. I really do agree that there's a lot of inconsistency, and it's just crazy. But I was talking to a good friend of mine who, though he doesn't necessarily like Disney Star Wars, he came out and he told me straight up that he believes that the sequel trilogy later on is going to be considered the best writing that we've seen in Star Wars movies, and that episode 9 is going to just blow all of our minds away and truly give us a satisfying ending to the Skywalker saga. Now, of course, he also came out and said that, but, if he's wrong, he'll admit that he's wrong, and he's just like, yeah, okay. And a little bit of clarification, he's not a full shill. I mean, he liked The Force Awakens, he hated The Last Jedi, he thought Rogue One was good, and he liked Solo. And different types of people, I guess. But anyway, so with what he said, it got my gears turning, and I was like, okay, well, let's travel, shall we? Let's travel. So, the year is, what was it? 2016, 2015? I can't remember. But The Force Awakens was coming out. The hype of Star Wars was real. People were excited. Yes! Finally, we get to see what happens after the Return of the Jedi. Well, the quick and short answer of The Force Awakens is it was a reboot of, A New Hope, of the original Star Wars. Just a few gender swaps here and there, a few color swaps here and there, and a few things here and there. Same story, different kind of polish. And even my friend that I mentioned earlier, he will come out and bluntly tell you that he will be like, yeah, it was a remake of A New Hope. But the story was, it revolved around the new character Rey, which they kept her heritage incredibly secret. I mean, we have to think they wanted to keep Rey's heritage such a secret that they didn't even give her a last name. She was just Rey. That was it. And it was a different type of, I don't know, a different type of character arc, I guess you can say, because even in the original Star Wars, everybody had a full name. And, here comes Rey, who is supposed to be our next big protagonist, and it's just, she has no last name. But throughout the movie, we see her just do incredible things, which the, her biggest character development has been the plot. I apologize if that offends anyone, but we cannot deny it at this point. Her biggest character development has just been plot convenience, like, well, she's in this situation, so we need her to do this now, or she's in this situation, we need her to do this now, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is, as we go through The Last Jedi, we see her doing incredible force powers that, not even Anakin could do in his second movie, and not even, what Luke could do in his second, or I'm sorry, his first and second movie. Now, granted, Anakin and Luke both did impossible tasks. I mean, it was really like, wow, didn't see that coming. Luke using the Force to blow up the Death Star, and unfortunately, Anakin using the Force to slaughter younglings. But that's beyond the point. But the thing is, we see Rey just do very advanced techniques and defeat the villain, no problem, which at the time, you have to think at the time that built a lot of interest in her. Yes, there was people who, I guess you could say, saw through Disney's, I don't know, shenanigans, I'll call them. And at the time, I will admit I didn't see it. I was very invested. I was like, oh, well, all right, I want to know who this person is. It's like, why is she so powerful? Why is she so great? Which I'm going to talk about a possible theory that me and my friend discussed, but that's a little bit later. Then we get to the story of Finn from The Force Awakens, who was a stormtrooper who went, I don't know, turncoat. And throughout the whole film, Finn had an identity crisis. Now, I can understand why. You gotta think, he was grown up with not a name, but a number. And he was raised as a stormtrooper, raised to fight, raised to kill, raised to shoot, because despite the jobs of the stormtroopers, all of their basic training is they learn how to fight Jedi, of which probably would explain why later in the movie, when Finn is holding the blue light, Luke's old lightsaber, and going up against Kylo, yes, he lost, but for someone who has no force sensitivity and has never really used a lightsaber and such, I mean, he handled himself pretty good. I will give him that. But in the end, he lost. But through the whole movie, he had an identity crisis, as I say, because he's trying to figure out who he was, what he is. But throughout the whole movie, he was just running. And then he ran into Rey, who, strong woman. But the thing is, why I believe Finn was connected to Rey was, one, he had a crush on her. All right. We'll lay that out flat. But also because he saw that the First Order was after her because she had BB-8, of which, Finn was a deserter of the First Order. So from his point of view, that he probably felt like that was someone he could connect with because he's a deserter and the First Order's after her. But as we know, she basically told him, don't hold my hand, I don't need your help, blah, 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 blah. And, poor Finn. Poor Finn. Because, Finn was helping Poe, but as far as he knew, Poe died, so he probably didn't have a lot of people he could trust. And, as the story progressed, they get Millennium Falcon, who Rey is an incredible pilot, and Finn, well, I guess he was an okay gunner, but it took him a long time to shoot down 2 TIE fighters. Just saying. And, as the story progresses, he's on Maz's palace, and instead of choosing to fight, he wants to run away. He wants to get away from the First Order to where, he was going to leave, but then he saw Rey was in danger, and that's when he decided, okay, I'm going to save this girl. And, Finn had like a micro-hero story, but unfortunately he didn't get to be the hero. I mean, I guess you can say he held off Kylo Ren long enough, but at the same time he kind of didn't. I don't know. And, we have the other character, Poe Dameron, who was kind of absent pretty much a good portion of the movie. Yeah, he was there. He was in the beginning, but he got captured. He unwillingly gave the information to Kylo Ren, and then he helped lead the resistance against the strike on Starkiller Base. So not that Poe didn't have a major role, it's just his role was minor. And then we get to the villain Kylo Ren, which I don't even know. He's definitely not. They can't play him out as the sequel trilogy villain. There's just no way, especially considering he's lost to the hero twice. But, then we get to Snoke, and Snoke had the potential to be like the Palpatine figure, but then we get into the events of The Last Jedi, and just, oh my gosh, man. It's been a rough ride for the sequel trilogy. But the point is, despite The Force Awakens being just a repolished version of A New Hope, it did have potential. Granted, it reset the Star Wars universe to a time we've already seen. No Jedi, and instead of an Empire, it's a First Order. The reminders of the Republic has been washed away. You get where I'm going with this. But when we get into The Last Jedi, it's just everything disappeared. All the buildup from The Force Awakens disappeared, and I'm not even going to go into what happened with Luke, but, we have Rey. She doesn't really go through any character development. Once again, her strongest character development is the plot itself, because they needed her to do these things for convenience, to the point where Rey defeated Kylo Ren once, went to Luke, somewhat trained under him. I don't know. I don't think it was really training because it seemed like she got more training from herself than she did Luke, and she bested him in battle. Now, granted, we don't know what happened to Luke's lightsaber. We're assuming he tossed it into the ocean along with his X-Wing, but at the same time, she bested Luke and left, did her own thing despite Luke's warnings. Finn still was kind of having an identity crisis, but he didn't want to stay with the Resistance. He wanted to go find Rey, but then he met up with Rose Tico and the whole Canto Bite side story. I'm not gonna get into it because y'all already know it was just pointless. Poe was smacked around by all the strong women, being called a hothead and a bunch of other insults. But the reality is, if it wasn't for Poe destroying that, what was it, Dreadnought, I believe it was called, the Resistance would have been dead so much quicker in that very slow space chase. And that's the reality. If it wasn't for Poe, that Dreadnought just would have went boom, 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 boom. All right, they're dead. We're good. But instead, he got cursed for his actions because people died, which it's war. What do you expect? Not everyone comes back alive, unfortunately. And Kylo Ren, what was his story? To basically see his mommy and go, no, I can't kill my mommy. And then have those weird forest visions with Rey. I'm not going to get into it. There's so much wrong with it. Like, especially when Snoke was like, haha, I combined you and my apprentice's minds together so I can learn where you are, or something like that. And it's just like, hold on, if Snoke's that powerful to link two minds, why couldn't he just link with Rey's mind and know where Luke is? Anyway, I guess Kylo Ren's biggest story arc is he failed to beat and turn Rey again, but hey, he killed Snoke and now he's the Supreme Leader. Yeah! He's still not the sequel trilogy villain that we need, though. Yeah. And a fun thing that I actually finally pieced together, even though I'm sure there's someone that pieced it together a lot sooner than me, is, as we know, Luke had that Force projection, which I'm still trying to figure that one out myself, because he was more than just, like, a Force image, because yes, if he was just a Force image, people would have been able to see him, but no one could touch him. And the biggest evidence about that is C-3PO wouldn't have been able to see him, because if he was just a pure Force image in the Star Wars lore, yes, living beings like us could see him because, we live, the Force is in us, whether we're very attuned to it or not. But the pure fact C-3PO was able to see Luke's Force projection, and the fact he was able to touch Leia physically, kiss her, hand her the dice, and everything else, there was definitely some kind of very powerful and very real physical being of Luke there, especially since C-3PO saw him, because it was just a pure projection of the Force. C-3PO, his sensors wouldn't have picked it up because he's a droid. Droids can't feel the Force. They're not Force sensitive. They don't, they can't perceive things as the living beings in the Star Wars universe could be. But what pieced me together is, as you all know, at the end of Last Jedi, there's the little boy with the dolls telling the story of Luke Skywalker saying, haha, if it would, Luke saved the day, he helped save the Resistance, and yada, 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 he's the savior. But the reality is no, he wasn't. He wasn't the savior that day. The savior that day was Rey. And what I mean by that is, if, as we saw, Luke bought time. Yes, he bought time and distracted the First Order. But when the Resistance got to the end of the cave was blocked off. If it wasn't for Rey being at the exact location at the right time, using her Mary Sue magic to lift and open up the cave for the Resistance to retreat, all Luke would have done was just delay the inevitable. which, because eventually the First Order would have charged into the cave, killed all the Resistance fighter, but they would have took Leia hostage because, she's much more valuable alive. But if it wasn't for Rey, they would be dead. And that's the truth. And honestly, I kind of feel like I like that ending better. Like, what I mean is, if, say everything did happen as it did, but Rey wasn't there, she didn't make it in time, and the First Order came and killed everyone but took Leia, Poe, captive to get information. But instead, Rey meets up with Finn and the unfortunate Rose Tico. I think that would have built up a little bit more suspense at The Last Jedi, because then it would have given a little bit more, I guess, personal drive for these characters to go out and try to do stuff, because, now Leia and Poe are captured. And, they got to get that motivation. That would be a fine plot point for them to charge in and actually do something in the last, or Rise of Skywalker. But unfortunately, we didn't get that because, oh Lord, I don't know. Like, especially with the Knights of Ren folks. Remember, The Force Awakens, the Knights of Ren were just, dark side worshippers, but they weren't Force sensitive. Now, the Knights of Ren are the other half of Luke's academy that killed the other half. I mean, yeah, what can you do? I mean, good job, Disney. Good job. Or Lucasfilm. Or both of you. I don't know. Anyway, so before I talk about the next phase, I have to make 100% clear this is all theory. What I'm about to talk to about the Rise of Skywalker is just theory. Nothing has been proven. Nothing has been canonized except for what we see. Now, I will make sure to link this video in the description, but Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, he talked about on his live stream how Red Media, I forget the name of the media, it's in his video, but he talked about how the guy theorized that time travel is going to be introduced in The Rise of Skywalker. And honestly, I believe it. I do believe it. Now, time travel has been introduced in Rebels. That has been canonized. And I also believe there was a story in the EU where time travel was also in that story, but I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've read any of those EU books. But anyway, the theory is, and I'm sure most of y'all have heard about that potential leak about where the end game of the Star Wars 9 was basically Rey was going to go to the destruction of the second Death Star, activate that transmitter, broadcast the story of Luke Skywalker, and that was going to apparently convince the whole galaxy to rise up and fight the First Order. But now with some of the new Journey to the Rise of Skywalker books coming out, it looks like that is kind of pointless, because it looks like Leia is going around planet to planet, basically building alliances for the Resistance to fight the First Order. I don't know. We'll just have to wait for those books to come out to actually see what's up. But the time travel point that Jeremy was talking about, I actually do believe, because here's the thing. It has been said by J.J. Abrams that Rey is much more confident in her abilities. She's much more skilled. She's much more powerful. Now, the thing is, though one can train themselves, yes, one can sit there and focus on themselves by training themselves, just like with marksmanship or drawing, yes, you can have an instructor and a tutor, but you can sit there and you can train yourself and get better and improve on your techniques. But to truly get the finer understandings of everything, it is, always good to have a master to teach you. But the thing is, at this point, all the Jedi are dead. There's no more Jedi. Luke was the last Jedi, and he's dead. Now, some of y'all can come out and say, well, the Force Ghost probably just trained her, makes sense. Yes, it makes sense, but at the same time, what makes Rey more special than Luke? Obi-Wan was going to train Luke, but the thing is, as we know, he died. But Obi-Wan could have manifested himself as the Force Spirit, and he could have trained Luke in that time before he went to Yoda. Now, in the EU, there were moments where Obi-Wan did step in, and he did, kind of communicate with Luke to help him understand, the very, very basics. But from what I've seen of the new canon, Obi-Wan hasn't done that. Obi-Wan hasn't really trained Luke. He's warned him a few times, like when he was encountering Darth Vader for the first time. He told him, listen very carefully. Run away, Luke. But for the most part, Luke didn't receive any official Jedi training until he met with Yoda, of which that was only a few days. But if the Force Ghosts trained Rey, I mean, honestly, from my point of view, that would just be like, why is she so special that the Force Ghosts choose to train her, but yet from their Obi-Wan's point of view, the Dark Times, why didn't he do the same thing with Luke? I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying. I understand Rey has some serious Mary Sue magic going on with her, but that's just something I want y'all to think about. So anyway, as the story goes on, as you know, we've got the Sith Troopers, which it's also been canonized that, the First Order is apparently so obsessed with controlling everything, they created the Sith Troopers, and the Sith Troopers are for dark alchemy and dark force magic, and I mean, I guess that makes sense because in the EU there were such stormtroopers that Palpatine used. So, I mean, I guess tomato, tomato, right? And with the time traveling, it would make sense to me because since all the Jedi are dead, and we're going to assume that the Force Ghosts are not training her, why not make it where she goes back in time to a point to where she finds Luke before the fall of his academy, or before, hell, maybe even before Ben Solo is born and gets formal training from Luke? What if she brings a younger Luke to the future with her to help her stop the First Order and his nephew? And I believe also in the theory that Jeremy was talking about is the guy talked about where it looks like even Darth Vader himself might come from the past to the future, of which JJ did say that he took account everything. Everything from the prequel, the original, and what came before the Rise of Skywalker so far. And they're not going to bring Anakin into it. I'm going to tell y'all right now. Yes, I personally do believe that Anakin Skywalker should be in the Rise of Skywalker, because if this is the end of the Skywalker saga, it should only be right that Anakin should be in it because he was the beginning of the Skywalker saga. But if that time traveling is where Darth Vader comes in, then okay, I guess there you go. There is Anakin, but it's evil Anakin, it's Darth Vader. Of which, I mean, I guess would make sense. There's just so much interesting in this. And another reason why I kind of buy into the time traveling is because I know Disney has been wanting to do a hard reboot of Star Wars for a while now. We all know it. We all know it. Disney wants to try their best to get away from the George Lucas Star Wars so they can control it and build it their way. It's what Disney does. They get a franchise and they make it theirs. And what better way to do that than to create a time traveling, which has already been canonized, to where, let's say the events are going good. Let's say like Rey is struggling, the Resistance is just getting defeated. It looks like, absolute defeat is on the horizon. She goes back in time to maybe even before Order 66. And, she warns the Jedi of old that, hey, I'm from the future, and, this stuff is happening, but we can stop it all now. Of which where the Jedi converge on Palpatine again, and this time, maybe win. And when Rey returns to the future, she could, Thanos out of existence because time travel's a bitch. But at the same time, instead of it being the era of the Empire, it would be the Republic and the Jedi restored, which means Rey would be the savior of the Jedi, the savior of the Republic, the time-traveling Jedi from the future, self-proclaimed Jedi from the future. I mean, I could see that happening, and if they went that route, Disney then would have control of Star Wars, because then in their canon, or their vision of Star Wars, the George Lucas era has been reset. It's been a hard reset. And now they'll be able to take Star Wars in any direction they want. But as I said, this is all just a theory, and this is just my personal theory of what they could do. And as I said, I believe it. I believe they'll do something like that at some point. Because why have time travel introduced in the canon if you're not going to use it for something big? Now, obviously, that's going to make a lot of fans mad because it would, in the Disneyverse, decanonize everything George Lucas created. But at the same time, what do they care? It's their property, it's their franchise. They can do whatever they want with it. Now, will they do that? I don't know. It's highly doubtful. I mean, with this Rise of Skywalker, they can't bring Luke back. They can't bring him back alive, because if they bring him back alive, that's going to be a retcon of the retcon. And for Rey, I mean, JJ says that he's finally going to talk about her heritage, but the reality is do we care? Her heritage should have been talked about a lot sooner, whether it been a book or in the second movie about her, but they never did. And honestly, it's probably going to be something silly like she was one of Palpatine's experiments where she is a clone of Luke, just female Luke. I don't know. And honestly, I just don't think a lot of people care at this point. We have Rey, this magical girl who's capable of just damn near everything. And there's just been no explanation why. Like, something I told my friend, of which it has been canonized that the Force, it's alive. It has a will of its own. For those who watch Season 6 of the Clone Wars, Yoda goes to Korriban, or as they call it in the show, Moraban, and talks to the Force itself, and the Force gave itself a physical appearance so Yoda can communicate with it. And since the Force is alive and has a will of its own, is it possible that the reason Rey is just so good at everything is because maybe the Force chose her to be their avatar? And what I mean by that is, even Force-sensitive babies know they have the Force at times. Now, Luke, on the other hand, he was kind of told by his aunt and uncle to repress that because, they knew what was up. They knew what was up. But, with Rey, maybe she was the same way. They were told to repress it, or maybe Rey really didn't have any Force powers, and the Force chose her as their avatar and intentionally gave her the Force. And to once again bring balance to the Force. You figured if the Force is alive, they would do something about the dark side, because they really seem to favor the light. Or, that's confusing on its own, folks. But you get what I'm saying here. There's been very little interest in many of the characters. A lot of their story arcs have kind of been pointless. And I just don't know if The Rise of Skywalker can really fix everything. I just don't know if it's really going to give a truly satisfying ending to the Skywalker saga. Because with all the other movies, we've barely seen any character development with any of the characters. It's just been they're here for the plot, and they have to do this because plot. And it makes me wonder, just what can we expect? I just don't know, folks. Once again, I apologize about the long video, guys. It's just this is something that's been brewing in my mind for a while. But just think about it. What are you expecting from The Rise of Skywalker? And I'm not talking, well, I'm expecting a complete dumpster fire, or I'm expecting to do the best thing. No, if you do want to talk to me, feel free to comment and actually talk about well, I may not like the sequel trilogy, but I'm expecting like something like Rey's going to be the next Jedi Master and bring back the Jedi and blah 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 blah, which I'm sure we all agree that's going to happen. But comment and tell me what you think. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see y'all later.